The second Steve opened his stupid mouth and knew what was about to come out was a terrible idea.
We should go to the cemetery. Try to get in contact with a spirit or something,
he said, flashing that obnoxious grin that somehow made you want to punch him and laugh at the same time. He knew I hated that kind of crap. Jessica shot me a glance, one of those quick looks that said, "Yeah, I know this is dumb, but I'm not getting in the middle of it. Also, I kind of want to do it too. Nobody's ever on my side when Steve gets one of these harebrained ideas." "No, I'm not doing that," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "You guys know I don't mess with that kind of stuff." Steve shrugged.
"Don't be a buzzkill, man. It's just a little fun. Maybe we'll meet Casper or something."
Dirk chuckled, leaning back onto the couch with one arm draped casually over Ashley's shoulders. They were like that a lot, always touching, always close. Ashley looked up at Dirk with a smile. So lovey-dovey, the two of them. Disgusting. But she didn't say anything, just tilted her head in that way she did when she was amused but cautious, like she wasn't sure if Dirk was going to join or not. If he did, she was in immediately. Those two basically shared 3 brain cells between them. Jessica wasn't even pretending to be on my side. She just sat there, swirling her drink like she was waiting to see how this would all shake out. "I'm serious," I said, looking at her, hoping for some backup. "This is a bad idea. You guys know I hate this paranormal haunted shit." But they didn't care. Of course they didn't care. Instead of dropping it, they just kept handing me drinks. More whiskey, more shots. Anything to wear me down. The thing is, they weren't drinking anymore. I didn't notice at first, but after a while I realized I was the only one still knocking them back. Before I knew it, I was drunk. Really drunk. So when Steve started talking about the cemetery again, I wasn't in any condition to argue. I don't even remember getting in the car. One minute I was on the couch and the next we were pulling into this old, creepy cemetery that had no business being open at that hour. The moment I got out of the car, a chill ran through me. The air had that wet, earthy smell, like it had rained earlier, but the ground was dry. I had this brief moment of clarity. Like, what the hell am I even doing here? Hey, no. Y'all need to take me home. I slurred, wobbling as I tried to steady myself. "I don't want to be here."
"One more for the road,"
Steve said, handing me another shot. His grin was too wide, too confident, like he already knew I would cave. Of course, I drank it. Dirk and Ashley stayed close together, whispering to each other. Ashley tucked her arm through Dirk's, leaning into him as they followed Steve towards the cemetery gates.
"This place is creepy,"
she said, her voice low but audible.
"Do we really have to do this?"
Dirk kissed the top of her head. "It's just for fun, babe. Nothing's gonna happen."
"Yeah, that's what they always say in horror movies,"
she muttered, but she didn't pull away from him. The place was ancient, like something out of a Gothic novel. The tombstones leaned in every angle, some so worn you couldn't read the inscriptions anymore. A heavy fog clung to the ground, swirling around our ankles as we walked. Steve led the way, carrying this black candle he'd pulled out of nowhere. I called out to him. "Hey, where'd you pull that candle out of your ass or what? You definitely didn't have that a minute ago," I said wryly. Jessica trailed behind him, looking more intrigued than scared. Dirk and Ashley stayed close together, their footsteps almost in sync. I brought up the rear, my stomach churning from the whiskey and the creeping sense of dread. We stopped at the center of the cemetery where pathways crossed. Steve knelt down and lit a candle, the flame licking unnaturally. "Let's just get this over with," I mumbled, crossing my arms against the cold. Steve raised the candle high, his voice loud and mocking.
"If there's any spirit here, is there anyone that would like to talk?"
"Nothing. Thank God." Dirk squeezed Ashley's hand. "See, it's just a bunch of old rocks and shit," he said. But Steve wasn't finished. He stepped forward, his tone more theatrical.
If there's anyone here, please give us a sign.
The wind came out of nowhere, sharp and biting. It nearly knocked me off my feet. The candle went out, and the temperature dropped so fast I could see my breath. Steve, man, seriously, that's enough, I said. My voice was shaky.
Babe, let's go.
Ashley said, gripping Dirk's arm tighter. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her eyes darted around the cemetery, wide and scared. But Steve ignored us. He relit the candle, his jaw set like he had something to prove.
We summon you, spirit. Show us that you exist.
And then, the knocks. 3 of them. Loud and deliberate, like someone was pounding on a coffin lid from the inside. What the hell was that? Dirk said, pulling Ashley closer.
Steve, stop.
Jessica snapped, her voice cutting through the rising panic. But Steve just grinned.
It's working,
He whispered, like he was in awe. I felt it first, cold and tight, like icy fingers wrapping around my wrist. I looked down and there it was, a hand. A bony hand, pale and skeletal, gripping me with inhuman strength. No! Let me go! I screamed, stumbling back, but the hand didn't budge. It was pulling me towards the ground, the dirt softening beneath my feet.
Chris, what's wrong?
Jessica rushed towards me, but she stopped short, her face pale. She couldn't see them. None of them could.
There's nothing there.
Ashley said, her voice trembling. Bullshit. It's right there. Dirk stepped forward, his hand on Ashley's shoulder as if to shield her. Steve, what the hell is going on? Steve just stood there, the candle flickering in his hand. Before I could scream at him, something changed. I no longer felt the hand or saw it. The ground beneath Steve shifted, the dirt rippling like water. A hand, larger and darker and more grotesque than the one that grabbed me, rose from beneath the earth and plunged straight through Steve's torso. Ashley screamed, burying her face in Dirk's chest. He wrapped his arms around her, his own face a mask of terror. We have to get out of here, he said, his voice breaking. Steve convulsed, his eyes wide with terror as a hand pushed upward, its fingers wrapping around his throat, and yanked him down, face first, into the ground. His muffled screams turned into wet, choking noises, and then silence. We all froze, too terrified to move. The whispering started again, louder this time, and the shadows around us began to shift, forming shapes, human-like.
They're coming.
Ashley whispered, clutching Dirk like he was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. I turned and ran and saw the others close behind, but the shapes were everywhere, closing in. As we reached the car, I realized we were surrounded. We weren't leaving this cemetery. The last thing I heard was Ashley sobbing, her voice breaking as she begged Dirk to hold her tighter. But even his arms couldn't keep her safe from what was coming.